This is Daily Nebraskan Dialogue, your source for on-campus discussion and debate. This week, Caroline Swift, president of the UNL College Republicans, and Jake Meador, opinion editor of the Daily Nebraskan, talk about the future of the Republican Party. While Scott Brown's election ushered in a new era of Republican power, what's with those Tea parties? Is Sarah Palin the Republican Obama? And does the party of Reagan need an ideological makeover? All this and more on this week's Daily Nebraskan Dialogue.
Obviously, 2008 was not a great year for Republicans. Obama got elected, the Democrats got a supermajority, but now here we are less than 2 years later, and things seem to be changing a little bit. Scott Brown, he won a Senate election in Massachusetts, and he's a Republican. So things seem to be shifting a little. What do you think that election tells us about the political mood in the country? Does everyone love the Republicans now?
No, I do not believe so. I think that what Scott Brown's election shows is that people aren't happy with the way our government is currently going. It doesn't say that necessarily that Republicans have all the answers, but perhaps someone who can bring a little bit more balance to Congress at this time is what Massachusetts believed was needed. Also, there was a tax that was imposed on medical instruments, and Massachusetts has one of the largest medical instruments manufacturing companies in the world, and so with that tax it made a lot of small business owners and large corporations and all the people who work for them not very happy because they would lose a lot of money due to that. And I think, money's a big factor in considering who you're going to vote for.
Right, so do you think that Obama's agenda is just too ambitious and so people are kind of swinging back to Republicans, or are they mad that Obama's agenda isn't being passed? Because Democrats would say people are just frustrated that healthcare isn't passed.
Yeah. Well, it's both, because you do have the progressive caucus, the more liberal population, that is really frustrated with Obama. They're frustrated over healthcare, don't ask, don't tell, Afghanistan, but I don't think that's the reason, like that Brown won in Massachusetts, or going back to last year, the governor races in New Jersey and Virginia went the way they did. I think that's more reflective of the conservatives kind of seeing some of the things that the Democrats are trying to pass, also getting frustrated that some of the solutions aren't happening or aren't working, and responding to that. So.
And now it's interesting, there's a lot of anger right now. Obviously, the economy, that's the big reason. Jobs are not being created as rapidly as a lot of people would like. Things aren't recovering as quickly. But aren't a lot of these things just problems that Bush started and that Obama's trying to fix? I mean, how much of it can be blamed on Obama? Are the Republicans right in placing most of the blame there?
Well, I mean, you could go kind of a deeper cultural critic and look at like Neil Postman and talk about how the way our culture's changed, we have shorter attention spans, less patience. And I do think there's a sense in which that's coming into the picture here, where you're seeing, I do think a lot of the issues that were created in the last 8 years are going to take more time to fix. That said, at the same time, I don't know that the solutions being proposed by Obama, or he's attempting to propose, that Congress isn't helping him out much, that he's attempting to propose are not necessarily sitting well with a lot of American voters. And so it's partly the impatience, I think, and unrealistic expectations, but it's also partly, I think, just skepticism about the plans themselves also.
Another really interesting thing that's happened since Obama's been elected is that we've seen this Tea Party movement. These conservatives that are going to the street and protesting things like the bailout, the stimulus packages, and, generally, conservative and protest are not two things we lump together. So, is this a movement a positive thing? Is this something that the Republican Party should be embracing?
Yeah, in fact, they are. The Nebraska GOP here in the headquarters here in town held a Tea Party, and I agree with it. I think that our government currently imposes too many taxes upon, the middle class, the working class citizens. And really what the Tea Party movement is all about is, smaller government and more freedoms for the American people. So.
Right. Is there a risk that some people might be alienated?
What do you mean?
By it? Well, a lot of people are saying that the Tea Party movement, they're just too angry, too loud, and they're kind of scaring away moderates. So is that something, do you see that happening?
Not really. I mean, not at the one that was here. I mean, in Nebraska, I think maybe the conservatives are a little more, well, I think across the board, everyone in Nebraska is maybe a little more friendly and open to people in general. I mean, that's what we're known for. But, I mean, I guess in I can't say for other towns, I haven't really seen it.
So what do you think about like this grassroots conservative movement? Is this helping or hurting Republicans?
Well, I'm all for grassroots activism, and to a point, I think smaller government would be a good direction for us to at least look into, which we're clearly not right now. I think where the Tea Parties go wrong is that it's never, they say it's just a tax thing. It never is. There's a typical like far right wing, like Glenn Beck style paranoia that comes out there a lot. There's a very strong anti-immigration tone to a lot of the Tea Parties, which I would argue is at the very least borderline racist, if not outright so. And so when you add in the kind of xenophobic, paranoid aspect that characterizes so many of these Tea Parties, they really lose a lot of their credibility. If it were just a grassroots protest movement, that'd be one thing. But to me, it looks like the far right, kind of like I said, in the vein of a Glenn Beck type, trying to pull the Republicans to the right, which seems like a really bad election strategy anyway, because historically we're a more conservative country. So if you just campaign like a moderate, like the governors in Virginia and New Jersey did, you campaign like a moderate, you can run on a very conservative platform, but run a moderate, middle-of-the-road campaign, you'll pull in those moderates, and you're going to win, because it's just a numbers game. So I don't really get the reason the GOP is getting behind the Tea Parties so much.
Democrats they talk a lot about how the Republican Party doesn't really have leadership right now, or alternatively, they say that Rush Limbaugh and Glenn Beck are the leaders of the Republican Party. Is there any truth to that? Do you see any Republican leaders that are really stepping up and have the potential to inspire people the way Obama inspired in 2008?
Well, comparing it to the Obama effect in 2008 is going to be tricky, because I don't know that we've seen quite as charismatic a presidential candidate in a long time. Maybe Reagan, probably more realistic Kennedy. So asking for a candidate who's got that level of charisma is probably a stretch. But I don't know that there's a lot of great thinkers in the Republican Party, I think. They're just not necessarily the charismatic types that are going to bring in voters and draw ratings on TV. And so that creates a problem then, because the TV's still going to look for somebody, the talking heads are still going to look for someone to bring in, and the Rush Limbaughs, Glenn Becks, Sean Hannitys, those types are going to create ratings. So they kind of become the de facto mouthpiece, which maybe is fair. I'm inclined to say it isn't, but again, if there was a more charismatic Republican voice that could be more reasonable, there wouldn't be a need for them to appeal to them. At least that's what I would like to think. Maybe that's optimistic.
Right.